welcome along to our brand new Motorhome Matt podcast for 2023. I'm Keith Gooden.
And I'm Matt Sims. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you, Matt. Did you have a wonderful Christmas?
It was great, thank you. Yeah, really good. Nice to have a break.
Did you bring any stuffing balls?
No, I always walk this way.
Boom, boom! I tell you what, those Christmas cracker jokes, they come in handy. Thank you, Eric Morgan, for that one. And thank you also for you for listening. Thanks for your support. I shall wear it always.
Boom, there it is.
Thank you very
much. Dear. Can someone buy Keith some new crackers, please?
It's 2023. That's nearly 25 past 8.
Oh, very good. Here we go.
Thank you very much.
Are we going to have this all year?
Why not? This, caravans, motorhomes, camping. What more could you ask for?
Yeah, there we are.
Let's dive into the news then, shall we, Matt? Tell me about the Manchester show. What is it and how do you get to see it?
It's the Caravan and Motorhome show coming up in Manchester. It runs from the 12th to the 15th of Jan. It's not far away now. The show is completely free to enter. It's on at Manchester Central, so right in the middle of Manchester. It's a fantastic show. And, of course, it's next door to the destination show, the holiday and travel show, which you get free access into as well. So you can get inspired for your travel destinations. And I am due to be speaking at that show in the Expert Theatre, so come and say hello. We have a stand there, of course. We're proudly partnering with Tottington Motor Company, and we have a stand as part of their exhibit. So do come and say hi. We'll be there interviewing people, meeting people, and come and say hello and join in the fun.
And can you remind people about the dates then for this show?
It is the 12th to the 15th of January in Manchester.
So just a few days after this podcast is heard by you. So make sure you get your tickets. Is it easy to get tickets?
Yeah, very easy. Just go to the caravanshows.com website. You can buy tickets there.
Fantastic. Let's talk about the NEC February show as well. We were all at the big one, weren't they, just last year. The February one, as you always say, is a little bit smaller, but still worth going to. And last year, after all the lockdowns and the pandemic and all the rest of it, if people hadn't bought tickets in advance, they couldn't get in on the day. So we recommend you get your tickets in advance. But this podcast will give you a very special deal.
It is. Tickets are reduced to £11.50 if you use the code MATT. M-A-T-T, dead simple.
Really? Not me. Matt.
No, just Matt.
Yeah. Don't put Keith in because you'll get kicked out.
You get barred.
So if you want to go to that February show at the NEC, when you go on to book your tickets, use the code MATT. And what do you get, Matt?
You get a discount on the entry price.
Fantastic.
Worth having. So go to ccmshow.co.uk. This show is called the Caravan Camping and Motorhome Show. So it's ccmshow.co.uk where you can find out all about the show and get your tickets. We'll be there again exhibiting. We have a stand and interviewing and talking to lots of people. So it's going to be a busy week.
It was fantastic just last year when we popped along. It's going to be fantastic again this February. So use that code MATT, M-A-T-T, and get yourself a discount on those tickets for the NEC February show. The podcast, of course, brought to you, as always, by thatleisureshop.com. And the January sale is underway at TLS. TLS, we like to call it, don't we? TLS.
That's what you call it.
That Leisure Shop.
You sound like Allied Carpets now. There's always a sale on.
Sailing Saturday.
Which Saturday, though, you didn't say.
This sale doesn't end Saturday, though, does it?
No, it doesn't. This sale's running all of January, so it's on a pre-season sale, and there's some fantastic offers, as there always are, but lots of stuff is reduced. Some of it's end of line, so there's a few clearance items, and we've got some new products in as well, which are on early offer too. So go to thatleisureshop.com and find out more.
Fantastic. So, thatleisureshop.com sponsors the podcast. Thank you very much for sponsoring the podcast. And the January sale is underway now at thatleisureshop.com. Get online now and get yourself some bargains. Okay, let's get into the main meat of this podcast, shall we, Matt? Accessible motorhomes.
Yeah, indeed. We get lots of inquiries at the Motorhome Holiday Company, which is our hire business, from people who want to hire an adapted motorhome. So they either want a wide entrance door to accept a wheelchair, steering controls, or even modifications inside to the living space. And we don't offer anything like that. In fact, they're very, very hard to come by. It's not something you can buy from a motorhome manufacturer. It's a specialist product. And of course, they're very expensive to have converted typically, as is the way with any adapted motorhome for any disability. And so it's not something that we're able to offer. But there is an exception in the UK if you're looking to buy a motorhome that's got specialist adaptation. It's a company called Coachbuilt GB, and they've been doing this for years. And I spoke to Kate, who's been running this company for many years and is a real expert in motorhome modifications. And we caught up with Kate at the NEC Motorhome show and tried to discover a little bit more about the business.
It's Kate Birch, the Managing Director of Coachbuilt. What do you do, Kate?
So Coachbuilt, we're the leading manufacturer for wheelchair accessible motorhomes and caravans and camper vans. So we take standard motorhomes, caravans and camper vans, and we make them wheelchair accessible. So we adapt them all for our individuals' customers' needs, which obviously guarantees that they've got their home from home with them, as we all like, wherever they go, wherever the road leads.
And what you're doing is really quite specialist and niche, isn't it?
Correct, yeah.
You're changing people's lives.
Yeah, well, this industry is so amazing. The outdoors kind of is here with us, isn't it? And we can really embrace it when we've got everything we need with us. So for our customers, it's really important that they've got the confidence to be able to pack everything. They've got everything they need. The layout works for them, and obviously we know that the outdoor life works for everybody because we all enjoy it.
Yeah.
Aren't motorhomes expensive enough already? And particularly if you're probably on a restricted income if you're not able-bodied. So how can people possibly afford this?
Well, there's a couple of things that help and to be able to purchase certainly things like motorhomes. There's VAT zero rating is quite an important aspect to when you buy a new motorhome. Bear in mind you can only do it once every 3 years, but that VAT zero rating will allow an individual to it subsidises the adaptations that you may need to have, such as a wide door and lift, to be able to access the motorhome with a wheelchair. So the VAT zero rating assists with that. It's not
so the reality of that is a £72,000 motorhome, zero rated, costs £60,000 to the customer, doesn't it?
It does, but you've got to have the wheelchair. You've got to have the permanent and substantial adaptations, so that obviously qualify for that zero rating.
And who makes that decision about permanent and substantial?
Well, it's ultimately the HMRC, but we've got a really, really good knowledge of what actually needs to be done. For us, the staple diet of need is certainly the wide door, having a wide door and a lift, and that allows the individual to be able to enter and use and enter and travel within the vehicle.
Now, as you're saying that, we're watching somebody use one of your adaptations. Can you just describe what's happening here?
So the lift's designed to make stepless entry into our motorhomes. So it's a cassette that's actually fitted to the underside of the vehicle. You press a nice remote control, it slides out, drops to the floor, you can get onto the lift, and it lifts you straight up, nice to the same height as the deck, nice and easy.
And it's very substantial. So a lady who is in a wheelchair has just come out, and then I think her husband has now come off. They were the first in today. This couple here, incidentally, were the first through the doors when they opened this morning at 10 a.m.
Early bird.
This is the first properly adapted vehicle found.
So what did you think of it then?
Amazing. Really, really amazing. And not just for me, but also for other people I know that are worse than me.
So you're in a wheelchair and you're saying it's the best adapted vehicle you've ever come across?
It is. It's very, very well done. You've got, yes, absolutely. You've got facilities. The wet room area is fantastic. You can adapt your bedding. Very impressed.
But are you in the market for something like this? Because we were just talking about financing it, and you can get the VAT. You don't have to pay the VAT if you have the adaptation. But even so, with that, is it something which is within budget?
It's something that we could seriously consider, certainly. Yes.
Well, you heard that from the first person through the door today, this Friday at the show. Given what we've just seen, is this a game changer for people with motorhomes, rather than making their own ramps, which you can fall off the edge of?
It absolutely is. It's all about confidence, safety, innovation. And they are important bits of kit, and it's important to have these things done properly and also feel like quality and that you would not naturally expect from a motorhome. We don't do anything. We don't change any aesthetics or any of the key features that you expect from a standard motorhome. We just make it wheelchair accessible.
So in the old days, you used to just fit a handle, a Fiamma handle to get, to help you get in. Maybe fit a slightly adapted bike rack, put a blue chair sticker on the back.
Yeah.
That's enough to get the VAT off?
No, not at all. No, it's not at all, because they're not permanent and they're not substantial.
Now, you see, the thing is, you're looking at me,
Yeah.
but I've got a disabled parking badge
Yeah.
because I've got 2 club feet from childhood, lots of operations, and now as I get older,
Yeah.
my bones are starting to fuse, so I can't walk as fast as or as far as
Yeah.
somebody else. But I'm considered to have a disability
Yeah.
in kind, but I'm not substantially disabled enough, for instance, to qualify for these adaptations.
The key words are habitual wheelchair use. So you've got to use, it's not necessarily the best way of putting it, but it's quite clear. You've got to use the wheelchair as a habit, as a way of being able to enter and use the vehicle. If you can step in, you don't need the permanent substantial adaptations, so you don't need the VAT 0 rated. But if you are, you can't access the motorhome because you need to access it using a wheelchair, that's when that plays in.
So we're going to go and look at this amazing motorhome in a minute, but I just want to ask one more question
Yeah.
about the VAT thing.
Yeah.
So my mother-in-law is in a wheelchair, and she's not.
Okay.
Example,
Yeah.
she's in a wheelchair, but can I not just buy it in her name? And, I want a cheap motorhome.
It would need to be permanent and substantially modified, and you could have it in her name, but she's only able to buy one vehicle every 3 years.
Okay.
So you're going to use that relief up for something that she may need. She may need an automotive.
I've no plan on taking her with me.
Right,
I
okay.
just want a cheap motorhome.
No, so the answer is we've got to. It's really for the people that it's intended for.
I know that,
Yeah.
but I know people who've done this.
Yeah.
And I know lots of people who've done this.
Yeah.
And they've saved a lot. Of course you do.
Yeah.
And I mean, the rules have just got much more strict, haven't they?
Yeah, and in my opinion, rightfully so. It means that the qualifying people are actually benefiting from something that is really thought about and intended for them. And it's a good way of encouraging people to use motorhome, to use a motorhome as a wheelchair user. We're here to embrace them. But in the past, it was. It was abused, and these ramps and clamps was the old saying. I think the whole industry has kind of come on board with the fact that that can't be abused anymore. The HMRC have really tightened up on it, and if you want it done properly, there's a certain way of doing it, and we're here to help and to give all the advice that anybody would ever need to make sure that these things are properly adhered to.
And is it still the case, Kate, that when you sell the motorhome, you're not allowed to make a profit on it? Is that true?
No, well, it's not true. Right. When they come back as under the same second-hand margin scheme as any other vehicle. So you're not allowed to. The 1 in 3 year rule is what stops you from making profit on a vehicle, because you've obviously got to hold on to it for 3 years because you can't sell it.
But they've gone up. They've gone up in price.
Yeah, well, that's the same with anything. Even if you bought it at 20% and they've gone up in price, you could sell it and maybe make a profit at the minute.
Okay.
But it's not. You can't buy another one.
So, Matt, why can't non-able-bodied people make a profit if they buy a motorhome like anybody else, adapted or not?
Well, they obviously can.
Just a quick one. I've got a motorhome. I want to bring it along and I want you to adapt it. Is that what you do?
We can do that as well. It's got to be feasible. I'll look at the practicality of the actual design, because sometimes it's easier to buy a new one and have one that only needs minimal adaptations than trying to fit a square peg in a round hole. Best way of putting it. So there's some things that you don't want to pay us to move a kitchen because we need to make it wheelchair accessible, when we could buy a motorhome that's already got the kitchen in the right place.
Layout,
Yeah. Right layout is always key. That's the best. That's the first place.
And
to
are
start.
there certain models that are and makes indeed which are more appropriate to what you do?
Yeah, we have a good range of motorhomes and caravans to choose from, but we really do hone in on a few models that are the most cost effective, offer the right level of specification, give our customers choice. We like to be able for them to fall in love with the caravan or motorhome that they order, but we really align ourselves with the Swift Group because I think they're very forward thinking. They have a great range of vehicles. They're very modern, and they're really good at kind of embracing our customer and saying, hey, our products are for you too.
People should speak to you before they make that first purchase.
Definitely. Nothing worse than somebody showing up and I have to say, I'm sorry, that caravan can't be made wheelchair accessible.
Yeah.
And the thing is, of course, is because you can't get around, or you're a wheelchair user, there's no reason why you shouldn't live your life just as freely as anybody else enjoying motorhoming. You shouldn't have a second-class product, should you? And the VAT off it just helps to make it affordable. So this attitude that somehow disabled people, are second-class citizens, that's not on, is it?
Not at all. I mean, most of our customers are most inspiring, adventurous. They've got a really good attitude to this kind of life. They really do embrace it. And also as well, they want to feel in part of the industry. And don't we all? We all want to feel like we belong? Yeah. And for that's what we're here to do. And they should have a choice of an amazing range of vehicles. We all have a choice. So that's what we do, is we give them the opportunity.
You were talking about funding this and how that happens. Now, for some people, they could have a life-changing accident that means they're wheelchair-bound all of a sudden. And a lot of the funding is from insurance companies, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, I think when you have a catastrophic injury, you do spend a little time going, well, how am I going to travel moving forward? And there are people out there that kind of give advice on what you need to do. And certainly, as we've been developing our business, motorhoming and caravan is come to the forefront of people making decisions about their future travel plans, and it's quite an important thing to think about. It's also quite exciting for somebody who may have never motorhomed or caravan before, and they've got this opportunity to travel and kind of have a bit of restorative independence, even when their life has potentially changed.
And it's a bespoke product as well. Like I said, it's not a second-class product. Yeah. You're not making compromises. You and your company are making sure the people who in a wheelchair are experiencing what everybody else experiences.
Yeah, you want to enjoy your product. You want to be able to spend the money and think, wow, I've got something that I'm really proud of, and that's what we do. Yeah.
Well, you and Matt are going to go inside, so I'm going to hand in my gubbins, all right? So, because it's not going to have three of us around in there. I'll probably fall out the door anyway, ramp or no ramp.
It's plenty big enough.
Come on, Kate, let's go inside. So here comes Jordan on the lift. You enjoying that? Look at that. Seamless. Welcome aboard. So the first thing, Kate, it's very obvious, obviously the lift. Yeah. And we've got a very wide door. That's the first adaptation you've done, I guess, isn't it, to the motorhome?
Yeah, definitely. It just makes everything so much easier. You get the door out and you can actually see what kind of space and turning circle that we can get in the motorhome. Yeah.
And the first impression when you come in, come on in, Jordan. So Jordan's on the camera. For those listening, he's walking in the front door now, or the hab door. It's massive in here, the amount of space. So I'm stood in a wheelchair, kind of, what do you call this?
So this is where a wheelchair user would tie their chair down, and it's called a wheelchair restraint system. So you see these dots on the floor? They have clips that will allow the wheelchair to tie down to the floor and travel from the wheelchair. So for a lot of people, that's really quite important. It saves getting out the chair to move into a seat if they don't need to. So this space is obviously the lounge, table goes up, but wheelchair restraint system as well.
And here we are looking at the motorhome, but you adapt the driving position too. You do steering wheel controls, full adaptation of the chassis as well, don't you?
Yeah, so we can do drive from wheelchair, so somebody can come in their wheelchair, automatically dock in with their wheelchair and then drive. We also do hand controls. That's where we override the pedals on the floor, and you can actually drive with the accelerator and brake. Yeah. And that's the most common thing for our customers to use. Obviously, naturally, the chairs will swivel, which always helps with transferring in for anybody, and they can turn the seat round if they just they want to travel from this seat. But there's lots of options available for.
And you have a customer at the moment who's never travelled anywhere other than in an ambulance.
Correct, yeah. She's got a respiratory condition that means she has to be almost like full-time life support. So it was really important for us to have a vehicle that she has to lie down like she would in an ambulance, but she can be on oxygen, and she can have medical intervention while she's driving. But for her, she's a really big music lover, so she can go to festivals. Be the first festival she's ever been to.
What does that mean for her?
Well, it's just her life's just changed, hasn't it? It's gone from being quite restricted and everything has to be planned and unorganised to the freedom that everybody should have, right? Everybody should have that opportunity to be able to, push and go to and embrace the things that they like to do. For her, it's music. Could be anything else.
That is incredible.
Yeah,
it's
really
incredible. So talk us through the rest of this motorhome.
Yeah.
This has got a slide out. This is a Swift Contiki.
Yes.
And
So this is there's a couple of key things in here. First thing is, from the wheelchair restraint system at the front, we've got a hoist that comes all the way down.
All through the middle of the van?
So this lifts the person that needs to, and it will travel them without the wheelchair to any bit of furniture, so over to the toilet and over to the bed. This stops any carers having to lift or worry about breaking, hurting themselves with carrying an individual. It's also very comfortable and good for moving and handling.
So hang on, does this run on 12 volt?
Yes. So it's
this is manual. It rolls.
This has got this is manual. We do them with that are motorised, and this is a 12 volt system. So when you hover over it, if you don't mind me showing you, Matt, that turns and then allows you to travel this way.
That's amazing.
Clever, right? I'll get this out your face. But yeah, and then it can go over to the bed, and then. So then what we had to do is, this particular customer we built this for originally needed a turning system, which is quite a substantial thing, where in the night it will automatically roll them to stop any pressure sores, which is quite an important thing. But it's quite a big bed, so to be able to put that into a space that then still could have some wheelchair accessibility, we built a slide out. So this is the an American RV style slide out that allows us to create that extra bit of space.
So if a customer came to you and they didn't need the mobility bit, they just wanted the slide out, is that something you'd entertain?
Yeah, we can do it. It's not a problem. There's a lot of manufactured vehicles out there that aren't compatible with slide outs, but there are a really good few that are. So it's all about listening to what you want in the slide out, what size of vehicle you're looking for, and then we can look at the compatibility of the system against the vehicle that you want to do.
And I realise I'm stood here. I'm actually stood in the bathroom. There's no door, is there? Well, there is a door.
There is a door. Ta-da.
There we are. So it's concertina door.
So it's all nice and private. But then also as well, when you need that extra space for showering, if you've got a shower chair or something, you can open it up and you'll see that our wet room is extended out.
So the whole back of the motorhome is a wet room?
Can become a wet room. But we don't want it to be the main feature of the van, because it's, you only use it probably for 10% of your day. So there's a screen that will also pull around here that creates a nice private area when it's needed, but it also folds away and obviously closes in when you don't.
This must be liberating for so many people that have not been able to motorhome, and with your help they can.
Absolutely. Yeah, it really is.
It's amazing. And what did you do before you were adapting motorhomes?
Well, we actually originally were, some of the directors were from Avondale Coachcraft. So a lot of our skill base is from a coach building skill set. But yeah, before that I was in a completely different innovative business, and between the two, myself and the fellow director, we started it. We saw a need. We saw a real kind of niche within the industry, and having been in the motorhome and caravan industry, Jeff, he's the fellow director. He really did see that there was a whole market out there of people that couldn't be embraced by it. So it was a perfect opportunity for us to start something that meant something.
Well, you certainly have. Yeah. And I love that. Started something that meant something. I can imagine the impact you have on people's lives is phenomenal. Yeah. I take my hat off to you, Kate.
Thank you.
And just that lady earlier, she was wowed by it. Yeah. And I hope you find many other people that you can help this week. Thanks for taking the time to speak to us. It's lovely to see you. Yeah. Thank you again.
Pleasure.
Have a great week.
Thanks.
So that was Kate from Coachbuilt GB. Now, I was there when you did that interview, Matt, and I must say, one of the customers that we were talking to as well around that stand was a lady in a wheelchair who was the first through the door on that day. I remember interviewing her, and she said to me afterwards that was absolutely, the conversions were absolutely fantastic. But I think people need to realise, don't they, it's not just about wheelchairs. There's lots of disabilities,
of course,
and lots of adaptations that can be made, and they're not all hugely expensive. Coachbuilt GB do a fantastic product for people who need wheelchair access. It's not always about wheelchairs, is it?
No, of course not. And this is why, in as a hire business, it's kind of impossible to cater for the right needs, because there are so many. It becomes cost prohibitive to run a fleet for motorhome hire, which is really unfortunate, because there are so many people that have limited mobility in some capacity or a disability of some sort that would love to be able to go off driving their own motorhome on a holiday, and it's almost impossible to facilitate that. I did a big Google before we recorded this, trying to find genuine hire operators that offer an adapted motorhome. I found a couple on some listing sites. It was people that had the motorhome door widened, to allow a wheelchair to fit in. And there were some adaptations to accessibility, like a step, an electronic step, like we saw on Coachbuilt GB's stand. But they were privately owned and a very small operator, and one I tried to ring and I couldn't get through. So it really is, if you're in the market to hire a motorhome that has been adapted, it is just Googling it. Unfortunately, Coachbuilt GB don't offer hire anymore. They used to years ago, but they don't now. But it is just a case of Googling and see what's out there. And hopefully this year, more motorhomes with specialist modifications will come on the market. Often they're people who have them for their own needs, and they're prepared to rent them out.
Yeah, it's important not to patronise disabled people. They're citizens like the rest of us.
Absolutely.
They happen to have a disability. They're not fully able-bodied, which is a nasty expression, but a lot of people understand it, which is why I use it. How comes the manufacturers aren't supplying motorhomes or caravans which have been adapted at the point of manufacture?
Yeah, it's a very good question, and one I've asked before. I guess it's just about the numbers. It's a minority of people that would order a motorhome. You take 1,000 people that want a motorhome, and there's probably maybe one has a need for an adaptation, probably less, for whatever reason. So I think it's just about the commerciality of it.
You say that, but do you not think it could also be that people with disabilities, say not wheelchair users, just put up with it and make their own adaptations because it isn't available from the manufacturers? Is it something, do you think the manufacturers need to look at, or is it okay going the way we're going?
Manufacturers have looked at this before. I recall that Adria partnered with a company that were adapting a caravan, and it just didn't get the take-up. It just didn't become commercially viable. And, that's the problem, isn't it? If it's not commercially viable, it's just not going to happen. It's been explored in the past. I think if you're making your own adaptations to a vehicle, then, tell us, show us, send us a video clip of it. We'd love to see it. And I would love to talk to a manufacturer about it. I'm sure there are manufacturers open to the conversation, but I think it's also about an understanding as well, understanding that market, because it would be considered a unique market. And, a motorhome going into production in some kind of quantity that makes it viable, trying to generalise the adaptation is very difficult.
And yeah, we have to keep that in mind. The companies are there to make a profit, not to make a loss, and they can't be supplying something which then makes them a loss because they have employees which they have to keep on, people's jobs and all the rest of it. So we do have to accept that. But it's an interesting subject, and like Matt says, if this affects you, if this is something that you've done, your own adaptations, maybe you're not in a wheelchair but you are disabled in some way, we really want to hear from you on this one, because it's a very interesting subject, isn't it, Matt?
It is, and remember, if you've got a motorhome and you're not able to make the adaptations yourself, then go to a company like Coachbuilt GB. Kate and the team are so approachable, and this is exactly what they do. In fact, I was fascinated that they would make the adaptation of the slide out to any motorhome. Well, that's a game changer, for an able-bodied person that wants a slide out on their motorhome. A slide is amazing. I mean, I've had American motorhomes with multiple slide outs, transforms the internal space. And I didn't realise that they would do that. So if you want a motorhome modified in some way and you're not confident to undertake it yourself, and of course many modifications need specialist skill, tools and know-how, then a company like Coachbuilt GB are definitely the go-to.
Fascinating stuff. Thanks very much, Matt, and a great interview as well. Let's go to our audience Q&A now, shall we? Jamie has gone on to Ask Matt and asked a question.
Can you park up anywhere in a motorhome overnight and then leave the next morning?
So that's Jamie. He left his question on Ask Matt, as indeed, can you park up anywhere in a motorhome?
It's a great question.
We deal with this one a lot.
This is our number one social media contribution, I reckon. We did an episode on wild camping, and we called it that deliberately. I know that parking up in your motorhome is not camping. I know it's not wild camping. It's the term that people use for it. And so we jumped on it so people would recognise it. And it's the term people search, especially people that are new to motorhoming, who are looking to learn what you can and can't do. Can you park up anywhere in a motorhome? No, you can't, Jamie. You need to have permission, either by virtue of the fact there isn't a sign there that says no overnight stopping, or you need to have express permission from the landowner. Now, if you Google this, you Google lorry drivers and where they can and can't stop, there are rules for them on parking in a lay-by or on the highway, just to sleep in their cab. Potentially, you could just park up in your motorhome and sleep in it. Just draw the blinds, it looks parked, and there are guidelines and some rules around this. It's not illegal unless you're asked to move on, and then it becomes a trespass offence. But I would definitely do some research into this if there's a specific location that you want to go to. If you're parked up, you're not causing a hazard, you're not blocking the highway, you're not breaking any rule, any obvious rule, i.e. parked under a sign that says no overnight stopping, then probably you're going to be fine. You start setting up camp, i.e. getting your table and chairs out and your barbecue and putting the awning out. You've then set up an encampment. That's very different, and there are very strict rules around what you can and can't do then.
So the answer, Jamie, is you can't park anywhere.
Well, sort of. Yeah. You kind of could.
Listen to our wild camping episode. It is our most popular episode.
Definitely. And if you look on social media, particularly Facebook, there's a stream of people commenting and arguing with each other, some just discussing it, some getting a bit heated. I have to say, sadly, we have removed a few comments and blocked a few others. But if you're able to get on that post, Jamie, because you're not one of the people that we've blocked, because we won't tolerate any insults or rudeness from one to another. That's not on. But go and read the comments. They are fascinating.
The password is be nice.
That's the one.
Barry in Pevensey's got in touch. Why doesn't the government change the legislation? He says on the silly, his words, 3.5 ton licence limit and help instead of hindering the motorhome industry.
Yeah.
Change it to a 4.5 tons.
Amen. Yeah, I agree. There was a petition for doing this that went to government. It concluded in October. And do you know what? Only 2,108 people signed it. It's just not enough. It has to get to 10,000, doesn't it, to go to Parliament? So, if you're listening and you want to start a new petition, I have considered it, and I might do this year, but to actually petition government to raise that gross weight limit. Of course, if the vehicle is all electric, it is permitted to be 4.25 tons, 4,250. That rule already exists for electric van drivers, and they often have to undergo some basic training. I'm afraid I don't know the detail of it. But that rule already exists for electric vehicles. Certainly people have campaigned for it for a long time. I think, and I suspect, with the dawn of electrification of the donor vehicle, then probably the rules won't change, because they are imminently coming in the next decade, and I can imagine that Parliament just won't debate it. I could be wrong. Call me a cynic.
Maybe you're a cynic.
I'm a cynic. But maybe because the rules have been changed, maybe that will prompt it. Maybe it will. And say, well, if it's all electric, you can drive 4.25 tons. Why can't you drive it if it's diesel or petrol? So maybe, conversely, maybe there will be a change to the rule. It would make life so much easier and, frankly, make people legal and safe on the roads if the gross weight could be higher.
There you go, Barry in Pevensey, and thanks for telling us where you live. It's always nice to know. And if you do put a question on Ask Matt, whether it's written or you record something, always your name and always where you are, because we like to know where you're asking those questions from.
Where is Pevensey?
It's Wales, isn't it?
Is it?
Let's Google it, shall we?
I've never heard of it.
Let's get an expert to tell us. I think
Maddie?
we have an expert.
Hang on, we need the boss.
Where is Pevensey?
There we are, East Sussex.
I told you, that's East Sussex, Wales. There you
see? Thanks, Maddie. There we are. Thanks, Barry.
Thanks, Barry. Always put your name and always put where you're from, even though I don't know where it is. Shazad's in Birmingham. I have a dream to get a motorhome one day. Is it easy to use them and to travel across Europe, especially after Brexit? That we have this question again quite often.
Yeah, we do. They are really easy to use in Europe. Arguably, stopping over in Europe is easier than here in the UK. We talk about airs, so these are the often municipal-run, council-run campsites, if you like. They're stopovers. You're not allowed to get your awning and your table and chairs out. It's a place you can stop, usually securely and often with a beautiful view. And they're often free or very, very cheap. Maybe a few euros to spend the night. I know people that have had months of holidays staying in airs. Never been on a campsite. Literally a year. A friend of mine did it 7 years ago now. It spent an entire year travelling from air to air in France and Spain. Had a whale of a time. Didn't spend a penny.
So, as you say, arguably easier than it is here. And we were talking about the question there from Barry in Pevensey, which is near Wales, of course, where he was talking about the change in the licences. And then Jamie, who started off by saying, can we park up anywhere? And we said no. On the continent, parking up anywhere is easier.
It is a lot easier. Yeah, I would always encourage people to avoid the motorways, the big main roads. There's lots of stories of people getting gassed, made to sleep into a deep sleep and then being robbed. And I have met someone to whom that has happened. It's true. It's not just old wives' tales. It does happen. It's horrible to hear someone's tale of this happening to them. So, and it happened to them on a main road in a services. So if you are going to travel on the continent, I would head off the motorway into a village and find an Ayres or somewhere safe and secure to park there. The other thing to remember, of course, since Brexit, Shazad mentions Brexit, there's the 90-day limit. You can only be out of the country for 90 days. You have to be back in the UK if you're a British citizen.
That's 19 every 180, isn't it?
That's correct. Yeah, thank you for clarifying. Yeah, that's true. Which is a real pain if you're looking to do a long-term trip. But, there we are.
There you go. Guys in Hemel Hempstead. The first part of his question was about Wi-Fi, but we did deal with that in a previous episode. But that guy went on to say, we intend to spend summers touring, again, around Europe, so aircon may be a good idea. Depends where you go, Guy. If you go to Spain, I'd recommend it. What is your advice on the pros and cons of buying air conditioning? I've seen ones that go in the roof and also the underbench ones. What are the pros of each? Any advice you could give would be great. Keep up the good work, he says, with the podcast.
Hooray.
Both my wife and I eagerly devour the latest episode as soon as it comes onto its feed. Who's your favourite, me or him? It's got to be him, isn't it?
I love that. They devour us as soon as we feed them.
Yeah, it's Christmas all over again.
Yeah, brilliant. Guy, thank you. We love having your support. It's been so good to get so many encouraging messages, isn't it?
Fantastic.
Hence we're still here, really.
Yeah. Well, it's a year on in now, isn't it?
I know, it's incredible. Yeah. Well, there we are.
They said it wouldn't last.
No, it's a peak. We peaked early. Well, aircon. So, yeah, Guy, you are right. The big pro and con for me is obviously keeping cool when it's hot. One of the ironies of this, of course, is an aircon can draw quite a lot of power. And in the places you need it, you go on a campsite where it's really hot, particularly southern France, they often only give you a 5 amp supply, which just isn't enough to run the aircon.
Really?
Because they run on power.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Just 5 amps.
The French are tight with their
electric.
electric.
If you don't know your electricity, we get out of the wall in our homes in the UK 13 amps. It's
correct.
The current.
Yeah.
5 amp, usually runs a television or something.
Yeah, an aircon unit will draw maybe 8 or 10 amps. At 240 volts. So in the places you need it, you can't use it. I mean, this has been my own first-hand experience in southern France and northern Spain. You turn the aircon on, bang, trip the campsite out. It just won't work. So I find it a bit ironic, whereas in this country, often the campsites are 10 or 15 amp supply on that blue plug. It's the same blue plug often in France, but it's just lower rated. And it works fine. And it's pouring with rain and 10 degrees outside.
Have I mentioned this before? What's the one thing you'd never see when you go to America? Electric kettles, because they only get 120 volts and fewer amps out of the wall.
That's true.
And it won't boil the water. You have to hang around for ages before the water gets boiled. So in this country, when we get that 13 amps out of the wall, we're very well served. And
we are.
Do your research before you go.
Yeah, absolutely. The other compromise with an aircon is the potential to lose your daylight in the motorhome or caravan itself. There are units that will sit on the roof and there's a roof light built into it, so they kind of sit behind the roof window, and they often cost a little bit more. Cost is a reason for not doing it as well. They're not cheap. You're looking at a couple of £1,000 to purchase and then have fitted. And of course the other one is payload. They weigh quite a bit, so it's going to impact what you can carry.
Yeah, you tend to have to fill them up with water, don't you? Or they need a water source.
No.
No?
Oh, no. You're talking about a cooling unit. So that's the other suggestion I was going to make.
Mm-hmm.
So an air con unit conditions the air. So it will suck the air from the vehicle, condition it, and blow it back into the vehicle. So there's a coolant in it, sure, but it's not when you top up. We sell a unit called Total Cool, and these you pour water into, and we put an ice block in the back as well. And all they do, it's really simple. They are 12 volt, 24 volt, 110 volt, or 240 volt. Really clever. They just draw air in the back, blow it through the water, and then blow you a chilled air that's cooled by the water. And so, people say, well, they blow extra humidity into the van. They do, but just crack a window open and you soon fix that. I find them really, really effective. I love them. We use them in the summer to cool the shop, and they're a much cheaper alternative. But of course, they're not air conditioning units; they're air cooling units.
So when Guy says he wants to tour Europe, and I mentioned joking, it depends where you're going. We have mentioned this in a previous podcast. If you go into the south of Spain, you're in a metal box, aren't you? You do really have to be thinking about how you're going to keep cool.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, you need to plan and prepare for that. So keeping blinds closed during the day, just common sense really. But craving shade when you don't have any. Oh gosh, it's horrible. That's where an awning on the outside is an absolute gift, because you just want to get out of the sun. There are only so many trees you can park next to.
And don't forget, all supermarkets, even in this country, all sell bagged ice now. And don't say, I'm not going to buy bagged ice because it costs £1. If you're in a hot environment, a bit of ice and drinks and stuff like that will cool you down. I know it sounds really simple and stupid, but if you're sitting there, as you say, and the kids are hot and they're crying and they're moaning, maybe you're feeling a bit dizzy because it's at least 33 degrees.
Yeah.
You've got to plan ahead, haven't you?
And remember, a condenser fridge is not going to work very well when it's very hot. Compressor fridges, they become a much more recent trend. They're great in the heat, but a traditional condenser fridge won't function at all at that kind of heat.
Thanks very much, Guy and Hemel Hempstead, for your questions and everybody else's questions. How do people ask Matt?
They're really easy. Just go to the website motorhomematt.co.uk/ask Matt. Hit the orange button where you can record your question. Please do tell us your name and where you're from, and we'll try and guess where you are in the country. And submit your question, and we will include your audio in the podcast. Or if you'd rather not hear your own voice, you can fill out the form and submit, and we'll read your question out and do our best to answer it.
And Pevensey is not in Wales. ThatLeisureShop.com are our proud sponsors of the podcast, and there is a sale on this January for the whole of January.
Indeed.
Details, Matt.
Yeah, lots of new products for this year, lots of products from last year that we're clearing out, ready to make space for more new ones. So make sure you go and kit out your motorhome, caravan, campervan or tent, ready for your summer or this year's adventures and escapes, and go and do it and save some money.
Now, the podcast has been going a year. We'd never guessed we'd still be here, so thanks for your support.
Yeah.
As I said earlier, we shall wear it always. It's been a team effort, not just you and I behind the microphones, is it? There's Maddie and there's Jordan and the whole team at the Motorhome Matt podcast. But most of all, thank you for listening and thank you for watching, because without you, we would be nothing.
We would be nothing.
It would be just a greasy mark on this very uncomfortable stool. So how do people get to see and hear the podcast? What's our socials, Matt?
Yeah, if you go to the website motorhomematt.co.uk, you'll see everywhere that we're online on social media, and you can watch us on YouTube if you really want to.